Say I'm good-hearted, but I'm just getting started. Got my eyes on the target. No, no. Till the battle's won, till kingdom come. I'll never run. Best to give me your loyalty, 'cause I'm taking the world, you'll see. They'll be calling me, they'll be calling me royalty. Best to give me your loyalty, 'cause I'm taking the world, you'll see. They'll be calling me, they'll be calling me royalty. They'll be calling me royalty. They say I'm dangerous, 'cause I broke all their cages. No, I won't sit and take it. No, no. They left me for dead, I guess I'll never learn. Every time I break, there's just more pain to burn. They'll never, never, never learn. Till the battle's won, till kingdom come. I'll never run. Best to give me your loyalty, 'cause I'm taking the world, you'll see. They'll be calling me, they'll be calling me royalty. Best to give me your loyalty, 'cause I'm taking the world, you'll see. They'll be calling me, they'll be calling me royalty. They'll be calling me royalty. They'll be calling me royalty. Till the battle's won, till kingdom come. Till the battle's won, till kingdom come. I'll never run.
Standing in the cold, cold rain, I don't even feel the pain. Anything to step away. I know we could both do better. Wish you would've left me here. Now I'm just controlled by fear. What's the point in our reflection if you never look in the mirror? Counting the days until you're gone, waiting for us to carry on. Oh, I'm running, what am I running from? Time's going by, but where's the time going? I tried to give you everything, you took it all and took it for granted. If you're still falling out of love, maybe it's 'cause it's not enough.
And we're here. What's up? What's up? Welcome. It's week 2 of the Learner Drivers podcast. And you may notice something have changed. Something has changed for today. Clearly, for the better. We've got rid of NuaLaoch. We've got Gaogaen. Gaogaen, how are you? Thank you so much for standing at short notice. And how was yesterday? Sorry, tell me all about it.
No worries at all. I have to say, you flatter me saying that this is an improvement. I have been holding a little secret, though, from everybody. I actually was the one to cut the cables to Nua's internet, and I promised that I would restore them if he joined me in the Kiel Kraken Supremacy Club, because, you know, we're kind of looking for members here moving into the rest of the winter shenanigans. But You mentioned yesterday the first open qualifier for the winter main event, obviously. And first and foremost, I have to give my congratulations to the seeding committee. Yes, thank you for your excellent work in getting the top 4 seeds through. But it was a absolutely fantastic day. KJ, I know you have thoughts about these teams as well. Hamburg, Berlin, Kiel, Amsterdam. Like I said, top 4 teams, they all make it through. At the end of the day, pretty clean effort.
I mean, at the end of the day, it would take someone like Hamburg to knock UEA out of the uppers, wouldn't it? We won't talk about lowers because we all know how that went, but my God, hasn't the quality of teams gone up? And we saw it yesterday, like, wow, that team is actually going to be able to compete with NA. Who would have thought we'd have had someone like that? Honestly, what a day of Rocket League, and what a time to see. Like, the scene is improving, and it's really, really going to be great to see how these teams go in the next qualifier. I honestly don't know. I can't really see UEA making it when it comes to teams like that. I had my bubble burst. I have to admit it. My bubble is gone. My confidence is gone because the level of quality is just, it's above us. I really do think so.
Wow. I mean, there are people in tough situations right now. Those who are playing NuaLaoch, those who are playing Uniliga, we feel for you. We really do. It sucks. But nothing would suck more than having what was just a week ago, KJ. Your biggest cheerleader. UEA have just lost it. You're saying after one qualifier, they lost to Hamburg and then lost in lowers. I can't even remember who they lost to in lowers. And you're already abandoning them?
Well, I mean, obviously the overconfidence isn't working. I'm going to try really neg this team like an abusive partner and tell them that they're awful at Rocket League until they actually start winning, because clearly when they have my backing, they keep choking. They did that when I was on the team, let alone now. So, you know what? It's time to say UEA are over. They're over. Let's stop thinking about them. Let's underestimate them completely.
They're just over. Okay. I don't even know what else we can say about that, Gaogaen. I mean, we are saying, of course, UEA did lose to Hamburg, and we should talk about the teams that did indeed qualify yesterday. You said the top 4 seeds qualified yesterday, and it was, of course, Hamburg who were number 1. They were first to qualify, and they really look like the number 1 as it stands. And they were playing with a sub, technically.
Indeed. Yeah, dropping in with the roster. You had Lee Fox and Nex taking to the pitch for Hamburg, as opposed to Calix and Hartman both missing from this play. But still, the squad, like you said, they looked on form. Fantastic play from them. There really wasn't a doubt. You look to their path as well. It's a 3-1 victory over Salford in the winter quarters, and then 3-1 over Amsterdam to make it through, who obviously Amsterdam then went on to qualify through lowers. There's really not much to pick apart from Hamburg here. I think very many people in the scene are going to quickly realize this roster's potential if they care enough to play at their peak level.
I mean, KJ, right? Like, it's still sinking in for me that Calix was not even playing for them yesterday. It was MJ. I mean, obviously MJ still went to Wales with them, and he's still a class player, but they beat Amsterdam with those 3, with that Lee Fox duo with Nex, and the goals they scored. You can see them here. Like, how do you play against them? And the fact that MJ fitted in so smoothly as well, like, they seem to me at least that they might just be in a bit of a tier of their own.
Honestly, like, I think we were saying earlier, you've got such a stacked roster that, like, these guys could go on a night out and you could just pick the least hungover ones to play. There's that many good players in that uni. It's unbelievable. We watched them slaughter the UK scene yesterday. They absolutely just slaughtered every UK team they played against. They made it look easy, and they're not even at full strength. I mean, like, how do we compete? We've just got to appreciate it and really hope that these are the ones that are going to finally carry the torch and put EU past the playoffs in Worlds. It's all we can hope for, because no one's near them, in my opinion. No one's near them.
I mean, maybe Berlin are near them. Like, it's kind of like Hamburg just looks so impressive, and Berlin, most people feel like it's a slight downgrade, but they still qualified without dropping a series. They were number 2 seed. They were second team to qualify Gaogaen.
Yeah, Berlin is one of those squads that we got a little bit of a better look at on the main broadcast yesterday, as opposed to the B stream running here on your own channel. So you can take a deeper dive, at least from what I saw from Berlin, looking at that qualification match against Kiel. The one game that Kiel grabs. Now, I'm not trying to imply that this really had a huge impact on the series itself, but there was a disconnection issue early on in game 1 of that series, and Kiel came out the better on the reset, whereas Berlin, they had the momentum right before the pause throughout the entire first minute and a half. So there's only so much you can really read into that. Berlin, though, the point I want to drive home about this squad is last season, there was so much of a focus on Berlin from everybody outside of the EU scene, because you start to hear, here's the World Championship, EU will send their best teams, and everyone outside EU goes, okay, how are we going to beat these Berlin Phoenix? And to have that pressure on you going into this season, their performance, Berlin, in Open Qualifier number 1 tells me that that pressure does not mean much at all.
Yeah, I don't know. Berlin, thankfully, didn't beat UEA, KJ, so you don't have a reason to despise them or like them, depending if you're now the biggest UEA hater. For me, it's that, you know, you look back to EURC 2022, and of course, it was a Game 7 between Berlin and Kiel, and like you were saying, Gaogaen, on the main broadcast, we saw that Berlin just sort of comfortably beat Kiel this time around, and High Roll is a great player within his own right, but it sort of seems to have slipped back in from 2 years ago.
I absolutely love this new Berlin playstyle. It's just Nagflow chasing demo after demo, bullying the last man. Like, honestly, it brings a tear to my eye seeing such physical hard Brexit Rocket League coming from a European team. I absolutely love watching these guys. It must be so frustrating. Like, you watch these clips, it's just Nagflow bullying Poddy Doos and K3 on the goal line every time. It's so funny.
It's funny though, because Poddy's in chat. He thought that, you know, Kiel had fans. We haven't even had a chance to talk about Kiel yet. But I mean, we got to give Berlin credit where credit is due, right? I feel like we spent a year, if not 2, basically just despising them for being too good. But now that Hamburger are around it, they just feel a bit more likable. I don't know what it is.
I know what you mean. It's like they're finally the underdogs after 4 years of being the team to beat. And like, they're still not underdogs. They've still got 2 of the best players in the entire scene. But we like to think that they're underdogs because we're all pretty tired of hating them. I think so anyway. Definitely as a player, like, they're finally seen beatable, but they're still not. They've still obviously qualified first try. It's insane.
Yeah, it gives you a really nice story, though. I think it continues the momentum from what you got from Worlds, because to walk back my previous point, you know, with Berlin not performing maybe to the level they wanted to at the World Championship, now all of a sudden you really do feel like you're bringing that conversation of depth in the scene that much closer to fruition.
Well, we talked about the fact they beat Kiel. We may as well talk about Kiel, because the big thing for me here was that the UK did indeed get their team qualified, and it was the one that most people would have expected. They came in as a 3 seed and they qualified as expected. So big props to Kiel. I know myself, and I was not alone in this respect, in a little bit worried that if Kiel sort of wavered, then the UK would have had no teams in the top 4 qualifying through this very first qualifier. And of course, they did get that game against Berlin, but they dropped to the lowers on that final game of the night, and they beat Dorans with it. I believe we probably have a clip or 2 from that series as we watch their goals against Berlin, which were very impressive as well. It's just, in general, like, Kiel, it's easy to sort of forget about them with the likes of Hamburg and so many new rosters to rightfully be excited about. I don't know what happened with Dooz's car here. He somehow still scored. Yeah. But they're still an elite team. They're still fantastic. They haven't gone anywhere.
Absolutely not. I think with Kiel specifically, and I know Poddy is in chat, probably not too happy that I came down a little harshly there when talking about Berlin, but this team still has it. They are still absolutely relevant. I think the question for me from Kiel starts to become the ice factor, like the end of the series, because they have the ability to establish themselves, keep these games close against teams like Berlin and other ones at the top of the table, but again, we go back to the demons of the past, right? The World Championship, where they let the lead slip, even EURC. I know. We watched it last week. This is cruel. It hurts me just the same to open up those wounds, but it's something you have to talk about, right? Because Kiel, to make that step up higher and be that premier UK team, it's got to come with it naturally. Like, I feel like that's the next step for this squad to really push into a consistent, top 3, top 2 space.
KJ, though, last week you were probably going to say Kiel don't have to worry because UEA we're going to replace them as the kings of the UK. How are Kiel going to be okay if UEA are suddenly now non-existent, as you say?
Well, I mean, we were watching Kiel like just before their qualifying game yesterday, and they were 2 games up, but like we were still in fear because we've seen what happened when Kiel are 2 games up before. But like, I don't know. I'm gonna just be a complete contrarian. I'm done with UEA. I'll be a Kiel fan. Any UK team, just any UK team that doesn't severely disappoint me, I'm on your side now because
That's quite a criteria you've just tagged on there, I'm afraid.
yeah, I know. We've got to hope. I mean, we saw Roehampton. They didn't help, did they? I thought they were going to be our next saviors, but who am I looking to now? I'm looking to Kiel. They're the only ones that have done it. Like, please, just anyone UK. Otherwise, oh my God, I'll just start supporting Italy because they're looking good at least.
I mean, well, we'll have time to touch on Italy and probably maybe even Roehampton as well. Of course, the final team that did qualify yesterday, of course, if you weren't here yesterday, and hello to everyone in chat, it was Amsterdam, the Netherlands, getting themselves a team into the main event at the first call of order. A much changed roster, just JLT remaining from last year, and they've only gone and got an incredibly stacked roster of that. Of course, the main man coming in exciting many was Venci, but not to be slept on as well. I mean, Defsy, he looked just as comfortable, and the thing for me is how well matched this team was. Like, you had to be scared of all of them. They were all contributing, and I honestly thought they were going to give Hamburg a closer series in the uppers.
It felt that way, didn't it? And to not go that way, partially speaks to Hamburg just walking through and taking their open qual _1 spot. The other part, though, Amsterdam, I mean, they proved their point down in the lowers when they had to match up against the incredibly hot Genoa Pesto University team, who played well above their seeding, and now all of a sudden Amsterdam just sort of stops that lower bracket miracle run right then and there. So a lot to be said about this Amsterdam squad. I love the point you bring up, though, that triple threat. It's something that makes teams so effective in this style of play.
No, honestly, when you've got a player like Venci, and I mean, we have a ones main at UEA, but Venci's a bit of a level above. I was watching him yesterday, and I was just thinking, like, oh my God, I'm so happy I don't have to defend against that guy. He is cracked. That whole team, I mean, the fact that they got beat by Hamburg shows how good they are, but I think they're another, level above team that they're going to actually be able to compete with NA as well. Maybe not to the level, because I think Hamburg could even go on and win the whole thing, but Amsterdam, like, that is a roster of a level that we didn't really see much last year, and I mean, my God, who wants to be in a 1v1 situation against Venci? Put your hand up. Nobody.
Yeah, it was like, I just said it yesterday as well. It's so nice to have a Dutch team that didn't throw. Like, it was so nice to see it. But the thing is, as well, is they can't even throw based off availability. Their sub is Cass. Like, it's crazy how fantastic the roster is, and we all know how valuable a sub can be in a long tournaments that we like, the likes of which we have here in the university scene. I mean, I think it might have been GM in chat yesterday watching the series. Like, why is JLT still on the starting roster if Cass is there? And then JLT just went and scored like 2 goals in 10 seconds. It was like, oh, okay, I mean, fair enough then. They are all just fantastic. And I think it's a really good look as well that Amsterdam came into yesterday with that bit of pressure on them. They were the number 4 seed after kind of, I think, disappointing just a tiny bit in their performance across last year. We saw some highs, but they never really lived up to them. But for them to immediately come out and qualify in this first qualifier yesterday, I think is a huge step and really marks the fact that this is a new roster and maybe just a new era for the Netherlands as well in the university scene, because I think we've talked about the qualifying teams, unless there's anything you guys want to add. I do believe that we have our guest ready. It is, of course, Mercy from the University of Portsmouth, was a world contender last season. If you're talking about eras, maybe going to be continue to be strong in this era. Mercy, you are here. How are you doing? Immediately, I'm going to ask you what happened yesterday. Why weren't Portsmouth playing? Why did you DQ?
Well, it's a bit of a long one. It was my 21st party, like a few days ago. So may have had a late night, so may have overslept the entire day away. But it's all right. We're bouncing back for next qualifiers.
Yeah.
Really?
Yep. Genuinely, that's
Bouncing
what
back?
happened.
No problem. I mean, no. I mean, I understand that might be what happens. I'm just you're confident in bouncing back. I mean, in
Well,
the
yeah,
first,
of course.
yeah. I mean, you got to be confident, I guess. I mean, how has it been like? I mean, I know the year hasn't started the way you'd probably have hoped for thus far. I mean, like Psycho is a big loss. What has it been like getting adapted to playing with Microbread?
Obviously, it's been very different with Jacob or Microbren, as you all know. It's a completely different style of play in comparison to Psycho. So it's been, I'd say, for me and Bread specifically, a lot of adapting and just finding out what works. I mean, we're still in the process of doing it, but I think we're starting to come to a position where we know what works with Microbren. It's just about doing it in game and being consistent in tournaments now.
Mm-hmm. Fair enough. And I kind of want to latch on to the question of, I mean, confidence is key, obviously, going into the next qualifiers. And we've taken out some of the competition already. Hamburg, Berlin, Kiel, and Amsterdam are already gone through. But how do you rate, I'm curious, these teams that played well above their seeding in open qualifier number 1 that maybe didn't have enough eyes on them? So we look to Genoa, we look to Lisbon, schools like that. Do you think they could maybe run you a challenge in an upper bracket qualification match?
I think any team could give us a challenge at this point in time because I'd say we're a little bit shaky coming to the start of the season. So I'm not too sure on how we'll perform, but we're just going to give it our best, I guess. And good luck to all of the teams. But yeah, we're not going to make it easy. So yeah, it's going to be a bit of a challenge. And at the end of the day, any team that plays well on the day is going to make it through. So it's just a matter of the fact if we can do it, and we're excited to see who else does it as well. So.
Just to add to when you were talking about adapting your play style, like when I used to play you a lot with you and Psycho, there was no real main man. Like your attacks were a lot more dynamic. Now I would honestly say you're like the bona fide best player in the team. Do you think you're going to be a lot more first man ball chasey, or what do you think is going to be going on?
I like the way you say that, to be honest. I think in terms of like our team composition and just the way that we are, like. Yeah, I think with Bread and Microbread, they're more, I'd say, the passive players of the team. I played more chasey and just offense based. So I don't know. It really depends. And like I said, every team plays differently. So it's just about adapting to each team, and they all have different play styles. So it's just about figuring out what works early on into the series and then just adapting to make sure we can win. But yeah, for me, I feel like just absolute chase might be the way, but we'll see what happens as the season goes along.
Fair. Well, I've seen you at twos. You are very, very good, so I'm excited to see you ball chase a lot more, to be honest.
Yeah, we'll see what happens.
I want to not just ask about this year, of course, we'll come back to it, but I really just want to focus on the World Championship experience that you got last year, not just as a player, but as a person as well. As you know, a lot of the people watching, listening, they will have been wishing they could have gone to Dallas last year. They'll have been hoping they can make it to Worlds this year. Like, what is the whole experience like? I mean, you can talk even about the qualifying process, about it settling in when it started to feel real, like from the whole travel and everything. I'm basically asking for like a diary level recap, but you don't have to go into as much detail and sections as you want. Obviously, the results didn't go your way, but less on that and just more about the experience.
Yeah, sure. So, wow, it's been a while since then. What it feels like.
It has.
But yeah, from the start of EURC, I mean, we went into it thinking that we'd do well. We were pretty confident at the time. Wasn't 100% certain if we were going to make it, but we went in with as much confidence as possible. And like you all know that I had to play on a laptop on our qualifying game against, was it Ilcastle, I think?
Yeah, it was.
So I was absolutely nervous beyond belief. I think I was really scared of dropping into lowers because some of the teams in lowers were scary and anyone could lose them at the time. But I knew that if we made it past Ilcastle, that I'd be back on my home setup and I wouldn't feel as nervous. But as soon as we won that game, cannot explain the feeling. It didn't feel surreal. Like, it didn't feel real at all, sorry. Until we actually started getting on the planes and going. But yeah, that whole experience was amazing. And going to Dallas, meeting all of the players, just spending time with lots of people, meeting new faces, competing on stage. Yeah, I can't explain it. And for all of you up and coming CRL players and players playing in EURC, you've got so much to look forward to, genuinely. If you want to make it and you're committed enough, You definitely will, and you'll have a fantastic time. Playing on stage is nothing like what I've ever experienced. That sort of environment, being out there in the US, it's unreal, and you'll all love it.
It sounds electric, honestly. A feeling that I'm sure many people in the scene are chasing. But I wanted to ask, again, on Worlds, but taking our attention away from the stage and towards, meeting everybody, obviously being with everyone else from EU, but also meeting all of the North American players. I believe Psycho spoke to this sometime around the area where he said that the camaraderie between the players was fairly high, despite the fact that, you take to social media and you tend to see a lot of banter, some words thrown every which way. So I'm curious if you have any, either very specific experiences or just general feelings about how it was not only as a player, but just as a person meeting everybody who is as enthusiastic about Carball as everyone else.
Yeah, I think the main thing for me was a lot of the teams that went to Dallas, I was really good friends with anyway, like K3 from Kill, Coos from Salford, Ethan, who was the coach for Kill at the time. I was all really good friends with them, and obviously my own teammates too. So yeah, having that sort of experience and going out there with basically your friends was, I can't explain it. It made for the best trip. And even meeting some of the US players as well, that was phenomenal. A phenomenal experience. Who did I get on with really well? Samba, I played a lot of twos with him before I went to Dallas. I spoke to him a lot when I was there as well. I spoke to God, I'm trying to remember the names now. I think it was no, what was his name? Tylactor might remember, but I'm trying to think now.
The Nitrous or Nitro Drift played for UNLV at the time.
That's it, yeah. Spoke to him, and a few others, but yeah, genuinely meeting some of the people out there was great. I mean, I was really nervous of just being out there with a bunch of strangers who I've not really met face to face before, but yeah, I couldn't say how much I felt at home, and because everyone loves the game, it made the experience so much better.
It was good. I'm remembering it now as you speak about it, just the hotel in general, the breakfast, how good it is, just the situation that you're waking up on the other side of Atlantic, rolling downstairs, getting some breakfast you don't have to pay a penny for, and just walking down to the convention center to go play Rocket League in front of a crowd. Like
that was a long walk, wasn't it, to the convention
it was
quite a long walk. It was a bit
we
of a
got
trek.
our steps in. That was like the majority of a mile.
Oh,
obviously
yeah.
it's flat and indoors. It's really not that bad. But
And after that big breakfast too.
I mean, I don't know how much breakfast you were having. It was I was sort of just chilling with the egg and the fruit bowl personally, but
Oh, I love those breakfasts. I was making the most out of that. I was.
I mean, why wouldn't you? That's what the experience is all about. KJ, maybe you'd have known if you were just a bit better, you'd have sort of known what it was like last season. But
Well, I'll pay my own way next time, and I will just drink and watch you all play better than I ever have. I can't wait. I'll see you there. We better make it.
I mean, we'll hope so. We do have some questions, of course, that we were putting out to see who would want to ask you what, Mercy, as you are basically our little hosted celebrity right here. I'm going to immediately jump the queue on all of them, as there was a question in chat for you from Icerdo that isn't even Rocket League related. It's what your favorite packet of crisps is.
I sort of know what it is off the top of my head. I'd say it's probably prawn cocktail is my favorite. I don't know if that's got any controversial opinions, but probably my favorite flavor of crisps.
You have prawn cocktail in the US, Gaogaen?
That does not sound like anything that's readily available now.
Okay, no, never mind.
I mean, I'm intrigued by it, but I can't say that many stores would carry that. So,
I think prawn cocktail's all right. I don't know any people who really dislike it. It's a cool favorite. I mean,
yeah, it's a bit of a. I don't know. I don't think there's many crisps that really compare it to the sort of weird taste that it's got. But I don't know. It's one of those ones that you either like it or you won't. But yeah, I'm a big fan.
That's fair. I did say that we weren't going to talk too much about the results at CRL Worlds, Mercy, but Poddy did, that is of course Keel's Poddy, did officially submit a question through the official channel in the UR server, and I will read it as he quoted it. Why do you think Kiel performed so much better than Portsmouth at CRL World, despite Portsmouth playing the bottom seed in the whole event?
Well, to be fair, the team that we played, I would say, are definitely LAN merchants. They performed extremely well on LAN. I don't know really what happened. I just feel like it wasn't our event at that current moment in time. But it is what it is. Like, that's just what happens. We were there for the experience. We still had a great time regardless. At the end of the day, Poddy, if you were better, you would have beaten us in the URC and you would have won in the finals, but you didn't. So what does that say? But yeah, it was a good time out there. They did better on the day. They did better at LAN. Fair play, but we can beat you online any day of the week, mate, and you know that. Come on.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, we wouldn't just have petty questions, would we, Gaogaen? I mean, Sushi's question is way better.
Yes, exactly. Definitely deviating from exactly what we just did in the previous question. So Sushi, I'm going to read this out again verbatim, as quoted here from Sushi, says, how do you win EURC, yet lose to us on multiple occasions? So time for team number 2 to take a stab at them.
Oh, wow. Wow. Well, I mean, in EURC, I don't know what it is. We seem to just perform really well when it matters the most. I don't think whenever we've played Warwick before that it's really been one of them ones like, oh, we've really, really got to get the win. It's just like, oh, if they want to have the bit of an ego boost, we'll give it to them. We're not too fussed. But yeah, when it comes to the grand final of EURC, I said to Tylacto enough times that I was going to do whatever we could to win it. I wasn't going to let anyone beat us. So yeah, I don't know what it was on the day that I've felt like we had to perform, so that was it really.
Honestly, bold, making it seem as though, it's just charity match at the end of the day. Just feel like handing them a little bit of a boost.
Exactly that.
Well, there is, of course, as I'm sure you're very aware, Mercy, a new challenger, a new character, a new team that have rolled into not just the European, but UK scene. I am, of course, talking about Roehampton, and they've caused quite the entrance. They came in with a bang. They went out with a little bit of a bang yesterday, but Vex, of course, from Bath, has asked, what are your opinions on Roehampton, as well as apparently their weak Twitter game?
Yeah, I've seen some little memes about Roehampton and their current Twitter game, so well, we'll leave that one for now. But yeah, Roehampton, they seem like a good squad. I mean, I played with Crisis a fair few times in my life. He's a really nice person as well. But yeah, they're a great team. But unfortunately, it might be a bit of a controversial opinion, but I think they're a little bit overrated in my eyes. I don't think they're the best in the UK at this current moment in time. I'd still say that Kiel are 100% on top, and I support Kiel all the way. But Roehampton, definitely a good squad, but I don't think they'll make CRL Worlds. That's just my view on it. But they could surprise me. Definitely could surprise me. But yeah, I think they're, at this current moment in time, just being a bit overhyped. But we'll see. We'll see.
All right, KJ, what do you make of that?
Well, like, how long until we can stop calling them Frohampton, basically? Like, we saw yesterday. I predicted them to qualify, and look what happened. Like, they made me look like a mug once again. They're obviously a good squad of players, but have they been around together as long as Kiel? No, and that's why Kiel get the UK vote as well, just as much as Salford. I think they need more time together. You might see him peak maybe in January, but a bit disappointing recently, isn't it? You can see why people are calling them Frohampton.
I think I could mention a little bit about Roehampton as a team. I mean, we've scrimmed them a fair few times. So not gonna lie, yeah, they have beaten us in scrims. They play better than us in scrims, but the way that they play and the way that their team are built, I don't think that they have that true like pop-off potential compared to other teams. They're three decent players, but there's no real standing player that's gonna carry the team to victory in like moments that really matter. I don't see that factor right now. They could change it. They could bring something new to their play style. They could adapt and do whatever they need to get to that position. But yeah, at this current moment in time with their current roster, I think it'll be a bit hard to win those clutch moments.
Would you rate yourself over them all in ones? I want to know.
What, out of all three of them? Do I think I'm the better ones player?
Yeah.
I'm not going to
Teams,
go in
but
with too
one's
much of an
needed.
ego because at the end of the day, anyone can beat anyone in 1v1. But if we went back a few years to where I was good at ones, then I'd comfortably say that. But now I don't know. I don't know.
Fair enough.
All right. Well, it's been lovely having you, Mercy, to be fair. I gather we have an official update soon on the way. Is there anything else you'd like to add? It's been lovely having you on. The floor is yours if you have anyone to say anything nice to or anyone to say anything mean to. You've got all the chance right here.
Like I said, I'm a big supporter of Kill, so I really wish Kill the best in the URC, and hopefully if they make it to CRL too. I also want to see our friend Kood make it as well, but knowing what Kood's like, he's a bit of a choke master, so yeah, we'll see what happens with them. But yeah, best of luck to all the teams in the URC, and hope you all have a good time in Dallas with whoever makes it.
All
if
right,
it's there
thank
again.
You. Thank you, Mercy, for coming on to the podcast. It was lovely having you, and I think it's so nice of Mercy, right, guys, to wish his fellow compatriots luck in a tournament that doesn't exist. Have you heard of EURC? Because, I mean, I haven't. I've heard of UR Winter and UR Spring, but EURC 2022, you know, that was a great tournament as well. But all tournaments need their updates, as I am aware, as you have probably seen the official update here on the side panel. And we do have an update for you. In fact, we've called in our roaming reporter, Madge10, who is giving us an official update on the status for the University of Birmingham.
Yes, hello. As your official University of Birmingham correspondent, I'm pleased to say that despite their terrible seeding...
So that was our update on the University of Birmingham. Thank you, Madge. I mean, that was... I feel like thanks to Madge, I am now in the loop about Birmingham, don't you guys?
Yeah, that was very much necessary. A lot of question marks, and all of those questions have been answered. If you're a little, behind on what we've been thinking about Birmingham, we've been thinking about the team and what is going on with the team. I think those questions have been answered.
Undoubtedly. We do, of course, have true assessments for all the teams that played in yesterday's qualifier as we move on to our next section, which is assessing who the biggest over and underperformers were from yesterday. Now, I've got a beautiful spreadsheet here, as we clearly don't have KJ here, and that's fine because you know what? We don't need his opinions about UEA and his flip-flopping antics about them. So, we have a spreadsheet of the top 24 seeds here. And, of course, there were 4 teams who did finish in the top 24 yesterday, Gaogaen, who aren't on this sheet, but congratulations to them, which is, ironically, one of them was Birmingham. Birmingham did make it to the top 24. So did Southampton, Cardiff, and Perplexeter. That's Exeter B. All were 4 UK teams that broke into the top 24 from outside the top 24 seeds. But you can see how they performed here. Hopefully this spreadsheet is relatively interpretable. I don't know what you make of it, Gaogaen, but what jumps out to you straight away?
I mean, you can make a genuine sense of it quickly, and I think the schools I probably lean to thinking of the most are just those ones that played above where their seeding was. I don't think it's a crazy result for them to have done so, but looking at Lisbon and Genoa, both IUL and Pesto University, really solid results. Like, those are not, you look at this spreadsheet and you think, oh, the people who made it 1 or 2 rounds further, maybe got lucky, maybe 5 games fell their way, but we know that wasn't the case. The schools both performed well above their calling, and it'll clearly earn them favor, I'm assuming, with the seeding committee for the other open qualifiers to maybe place them a little bit higher next time, but hindsight is always 20/20,
Yeah, it can be scary. I mean, it was certainly scary for the first qualifier, right? As it's nice we've now got this data to work with, especially with the likes of, University Institute Lisbon, with Genoa, such unknown factors coming in. Obviously, they'd walked their way to qualification through the wildcard league, but you never really know how they're going to fare against even more sort of competent competition because they beat some pretty okay teams, but these are the best teams on the continent. Do we have you back, KJ? Are you alive? Because if so,
Yeah.
I'd like to get your thoughts on, the teams from the Mediterranean, Portugal and Italy, and how they really came in and did not disappoint.
Honestly, like Genoa, Pesto Uni, I mean, they're kind of like really laying into the Italian stereotype there with the pasta reference, but they're so good. Like, wow, we are really going to see the UK Germany hierarchy get smashed up. I can't wait. Like, they honestly they look so, yeah, look at him right there, absolutely just balling dudes. I was honestly the whole time watching that series, I was just like, thank God there is someone new in the scene to actually start exciting us, because it was getting a bit boring, just the UK Germany vibes. We're actually going to see Italy, we're going to see Netherlands not bottle it anymore, and we're going to see Portugal come out. And like, these are all players that I've definitely seen around like the comp scene and in twos and stuff, and they're all unbelievably cracked. And like, my God, let's go! How exciting is this to actually see new countries get involved? It's so good for the scene.
I mean, talking about them on an individual level, as we know how good Genoa were, I get back to them because, of course, the two teams did end up interlocking paths in the lower bracket. IUL in the uppers had no problem sweeping through Aarhus. They swept Aalborg, of course, who were seated above them, the best team in Denmark. I mean, they beat both Danish teams on that run. They got a game off of Berlin before they went to lowers, beating Exeter, but then they got swept by Genoa, who themselves had just eliminated Kit. Like, Genoa were fantastic. They swept Dorans in uppers as well. Like, no one wants to play against these two teams. And granted, they're going to be in qualifier 2 because they didn't quite qualify, and just like Dorans, they didn't quite qualify. We're speaking about Dutch teams. These look to be the number 2 in the Netherlands, Gaogaen, and I thought they were really impressive.
Yeah, Dorans, there isn't really much to, ask of them to provide more, giving themselves that shot at qualification, where most of us on the broadcast yesterday, as far as predicting who would make it into that qualification match to face Kiel, picked Hanover. Like, pretty overwhelmingly and convincingly over Dorans to make it here. And even in the ensuing series against Kiel, Kiel playing with a fire lit under them, they make it through. But Dorans, once again, from the lower bracket, nearly making the run that's necessary of them. So I don't think there's too much room for concern for Dorans right now. Again, with 3 open qualifiers to play, Dorans should be one of those teams on pretty much everyone's table to at least grab one of those 12 spots.
Yeah, for me, it's the massive change that has come through. We got the roster completely wrong in trying to guess it last week. Sane is actually on the B team and signed up to the next qualifier. That's the most impressive part for me. Dorans still with, of course, main man Anya, but playing alongside Mark and Jayron, it did give me Amsterdam vibes. They may not have hit the same sort of level of ceiling, but they felt like a very well-balanced team. For me, it was almost a surprise that they ran out of steam after beating and eliminating Dr. Bowman's Academy of Hanover. And then they just sort of got swept by Kiel. Is that just because Kiel are amazing, KJ?
Well, I mean, we've been in lower bracket finals before. They're tired. It's really just about mental stamina, and like Kiel have a lot of experience in lower brackets, as we all know. Like, I honestly think let's look at their peaks in this. Let's not look against Kiel because they're obviously knackered and they probably want to go out or go to bed. Like, this is a dangerous team. This is a team that on their day, when you actually get to the knockouts, and it's one game by one game, they are going to be so good. Because when they peak, like we were watching, like, so dangerous, so well all-rounded, and they've got Anya, who's like, he can topple anyone. I mean, against any defense, I feel like he always finds a weird way to score. He's just one of them guys. Like, wow, I can't wait to see these builds synergy because they're so good.
I mean, it is true. They are good. They do always seem to find a way to score, but I don't know if you've noticed what I noticed, Gaogaen, that the pattern of Anya and Dorans losing at the final hurdle. They lost a qualification match to go to Worlds last season, and they lost 2 in their LCQ, effectively 3 qualification matches to go to Worlds, and now they lost in the qualification game to make it to UR Winter. Like, I agree, I think they'll be okay, but I don't know, it might be a little bit more than just exhaustion.
Yeah, it is those demons to shake off, right? But I want to go back. I mean, we just saw the highlight package of Dorans, but that series against Kiel, it was a sweep, but Dorans forced 2 overtimes in the first 2 games of that series, and it was on the back of Anya finding a goal with 2 seconds to play. Very late 2-goal comeback for Doran. So again, I don't see the concern as much with Dorans. I understand that, the lower bracket merchant side, they need to finally exhaust that and prove to us that they can make it through in that chance. But yeah, to go back to the previous point, I mean, I honestly, come Open Qual 3 or 4, if they're still around, I don't think it's impossible to see them going through the upper side.
No, I agree. Doran's looking like one of the hottest contenders for Qualifier 2. And I think, KJ, one of the teams, I mean, I was also kind of expecting to be in that boat. I predicted them to make it through this qualifier, as I thought maybe it was going to be a sort of three-headed hydra of elite German teams. But actually, Hanover, I would say, struggled just a little bit. I mean, obviously, they still came top 8 in the qualifier, but they came in as 5th seed, right? For me, I was just that little bit underwhelmed. They had some great moments like this, but what did you make of them?
Well, like I said it last week, this team has an obvious weak link, and there's too many teams that don't, and that is the difference between a top team and a team with just two really good players. Like, System's lovely, but he's not as good, is he? He's not up to that level, and you saw him. He let him down, in my opinion. Like, and I mean, I've been the worst player on a roster. I know how it feels, and might not much be able to be done about it, but like, they're not going to be competing with the top teams if they've got someone like that around, just because he will concede goals for them. Because at the end of the day, you need 3 great players all on the same level. Otherwise, it's just unbalanced and they get confused. And that happened a lot. Like, their defense was so shaky, and it's because they're not all the same level.
I feel like that's so harsh on just System, though. I feel like when you've got a weaker player on paper, statistically, it's also about all the players in the roster trying to like smooth that bump as much as possible. And for me, it just felt like there were trust issues, which are your main priority to eliminate when you've got a bit of an imbalance.
Well, Zedo and Zai, they're not Nagflow and Tigray, are they? They aren't that level above that actually probably have that level of game sense. Like, they're not pros, but they're very good. You can't be 2 very good people and 1 decent player. Because System's not bad, but he's only decent. If they probably had some, Sebadam wizard or something knocking about, it'd be a different story, but I don't rate them, to be honest. I really don't see them being a top team, because there's just too many stacked rosters with no weak links around.
I mean, Vency's immediately come out and said something that was kind of on my mind, KJ, is that there's an argument to say that Sai and Zedo, at least in recent years, been better than Tigray and Nagflow. It's just a tough mental standpoint, I feel like, that the team takes on. Like, it's really difficult. You either sort of do everything you can to implement, and at times we even saw Berlin struggle with it in the past with their thirds. They seem to be going smooth so far with high roll, but for me, it's about how well they integrate that that will determine whether they can crack into this top 4, top 5 seeds, because they won't be as highly seeded quite going into the second qualifier. But they still have that potential. Sure, maybe they will have an even better player in spring, but they've got to look on the games that they've got in front of them.
Yeah, I mean, the difference between Tigray, Nagflow and these two is the experience in the CRL scene. At the end of the day, Tigray and Nagflow have been playing it for longer than most people have actually been going to uni. I don't know how they've pulled that off, but fair play to them. Like,
actually, true. They've been there so many years. We need to investigate.
Yeah, honestly, like, in that time, like, I've gone half bald. I can't believe they've kept this going. It's unbelievable. But like, maybe in January when they've gotten used to each other, they'll be good. But right now, I'm not impressed at all.
Wow. I mean, I was impressed. I just felt a tiny bit let down. Yeah, just a little bit. They may come out and immediately sort of silence that. In the next qualifier, if you look at teams on this spreadsheet that did perform a round or so less. I mean, I don't really want to talk about Portsmouth or Roma, teams not showing up and DQing. It is pain. But the next team on that list, Gaogaen, it is, of course, Aalborg from Denmark. They were upset. They were swept by IUL, and they didn't manage to regain in the lowers. Is that worrying for them? I mean, new third Zacharias, or is it just too early to say right now?
I feel like it's too early. That's where I lean. I don't think it's entirely worrying, because this roster strikes me, like, Aalborg strikes me as the roster that is the most privy to one of those unfortunate circumstances. Like, sure, they could have advanced with better play, but with so many teams in this bracket, it was bound to happen to somebody, and the fact that it happens to to Aalborg here in lowers makes sense to me. I'm not surprised by it. I think that they make it back from this and, come back in a later qualifier. But even though it may not have played exactly to the seeding, like it's not something that makes me think, oh my goodness, something's immediately wrong with this roster. Like, not necessarily par for the course here, but understandable.
It's just a little bit of a worry, I think, for Denmark. I mean, of course, Aalborg's 2 losses yesterday were to RUL and, of course, Hanover. But if you want to see another RUL Aalborg match, Sinarius has rightfully pointed out in the chat that that's actually going to be on stream tomorrow for the UR Wildcard League. So they're going to get a rematch, which I think could be very interesting because it was one of them sweeps that you looked at and I felt could easily have gone at least to game 4, maybe even game 5. Those games were close, but whether Aalborg can keep it together, I'm not so sure. I feel like RUL are a very exciting team to watch when they're not a little bit burnt out potentially. But maybe that's Copium. We have got a professional UK Copium supply here in KJ, and it is Salford who we maybe need to talk about next. They technically got 1 round less far through the bracket than they should have. It's not major, KJ. Is it okay for Salford in the UK?
Well, how many times have Salford all made it at the last chance? For them to go through qualifier 1 would just be blasphemy. We're going to wait until qualifier 4, lower bracket, and then they'll get through, and then we'll see how they do. Like, honestly, I don't fear for Salford. They always seem to wait for the drama because that's just where they peak.
All right. I'm going to ask each of us for a team sort of lower down the seed order that we're a little bit excited for, or maybe even worried for. It's up to you. You can start Gaogaen in the sense that we got the data here, at least the top 24 seeds from qualifier 1.
Yeah, taking a look, I mean, the teams that are lower down, and I think the one I have to point to is Twente, esports team Twente. I am not entirely convinced that they will, just kind of go off calmly into the night and not reappear at, the later stages of one of these brackets. They do end up dropping in the lower matchup they had against Aalborg, and trying to take a look at the upper side and who exactly they dropped to. It was UEA, so KJ probably a bit happy about that one, just secretly, even if you want to try and reverse psychology them through. So I think that's definitely a squad to watch out for. I'm curious, though, KJ, who you're thinking as well, because obviously, UEA sit right above, even though they technically got sent out in the expected round there.
I'm looking forward to seeing Exeter more. Like, Ban FC, how funny would it be to see them be successful? Like, couldn't even play last year, and now they're actually popping off. Like, I see a lot of potential from them. They're all controversial figures, which I appreciate. They're all good players, and like, look at them go. They've got one of the bright green tabs to show you that they've done way better.
Yeah. But they got completely niced by the bracket. I would love to give Exeter credit, but ultimately they lost to, Erasmus Rotterdam, and they got a free DQ win against a team that I'm more excited by. They then swept Engine Stuttgart after that. Stuttgart were only in that round because they got a free win against a DQing Portsmouth. Erasmus, if they beat Erasmus, I might have been more interested in this Exeter roster just yet. I agree they're exciting, but UWE is the team that I want to talk about. They obviously go out in the expected round, but that was due to matters out of their hands when they dropped to the lower bracket. Fact is, they beat Roehampton in the upper bracket, and they played Amsterdam very competitively. They may not play with their proper roster domestically, and that does tilt me, and it does genuinely annoy me. But Sebadam, Liam, and Solo, this roster is such a sleeper team because they don't always play at full roster. So I'm curious to see if they can sneak in to UR Winter, because it would be massive if they can get into that top 16.
Well, like, any team with Sebadam has a chance. You can't deny if he actually wants it, in third year is seeming a bit okay, if he gets his coursework done and he grinds, he's cracked. And like, who doesn't deserve it more than Seb? We've wanted him to actually do really, really well for ages, and I feel like it's his last chance, really, isn't it? And how great would it be to see him finally actually achieve something other than maybe third place?
All right, I think now is a good time. Is that a fair take, KJ? I think now is the best time for us to be educated. As last week we did talk about across the pond. We do have Gaogaen here technically from NA, but how about an NA player, of course, from Oakland University who did compete at CRL World last season. It is, of course, the lovely Raz, who we've got here to tell us all about the competition across the pond, as well as how you feel about Europe. And Raz, I'm going to have to start here on a very sad note. Of course, how are you doing? It's lovely to have you, but you didn't qualify for East. You know, I get you've not got JQ'd, but how's it going for you this season? That didn't seem ideal from the outside looking in.
Well, yeah, nice to be here. First of all, thank you for having me. It is not great to be, missing out on CRL this season, but, I think that can just be attributed to the massive amount of depth that the East has. I mean, I think if you look at the teams that have qualified in the East, there's so many new faces, so many players that have joined the scene and started, tearing stuff up, that it's kind of like, some teams have to go, some teams, can't qualify, and unfortunately we were one of the teams who weren't able to do so.
I just want to ask specifically on, you mentioned like all these new faces in the scene, but I kind of want to pivot here and use the North American connection to talk about the universities themselves that appear in the scene, because I've had this conversation in the green room a couple of times with European events where the system is pretty different over here. Like, you have some of the larger universities that will have a big enough student body to put together a good enough team. Penn State, for one, is a pretty sizable university, but most of the bigger schools in esports are smaller in population, a bit more remote in their location. So I'm curious, your feelings on that, where you have these smaller schools that will literally bring, bubble players and pro players to these small institutions to play, versus somewhere like, in the past, like Florida and other big schools that just have enough people that surely you're going to find 3 players good enough to contend for CRL.
I think I love this question because I think you could do an entire podcast about it. I mean, I've talked with my teammates. I can't even count how many times I've talked with them about this because we all feel really passionate about this topic. But we're all generally of the consensus, and I am of the consensus, that teams like, Fisher and Bruton Parker, that are very, very small schools, but they have, they've created this CRL team that's almost at the top of CRL. We aren't really supportive of them. And that's not even because of the players themselves, because the players are just taking the opportunity they see, and, fair play to them. But these colleges are, practicing, they don't have the players first, in my opinion, because if they did have the players first, then they would not invite them to those schools. Because if we all turn the curtains back and we look at some of these schools, like Fisher is like a one story, or not a one story, but like it's one building. That's the entire college. And for some of these players who want like somewhat of a realistic college experience, they're not going to get that at Fisher College. They're not going to get that at Bruton Parker College, I really want to give a warning to these players that want to enter CRL. Please pick your school first, or pick the types of schools that you want to go to first, and then decide to play CRL, and then try to find a team, because you're going to get screwed over by schools like Fisher and Bruton Parker. And I don't want to reveal anything about stuff that's happening in the back end of stuff, but there is a current team in CRL that has been expressing that they want to leave their school after only 1 semester of being there. And it's because of the fact that they thought they were getting a different experience when they signed up. Turns out when they get there, it's not exactly all butterflies and roses.
Yeah, it's so rough to have players in that situation as well, especially conflicting for you, right? Because it's the same people that you have to beat, but you also want to sympathize with them at the same time. I agree, it undermines a lot about what CRL and Uni Rocket League is about. You want to represent where you're studying or where you're from, and represent that place, and you really stand for something. And it's almost like harvesting a culture in that regard. And it's like, here, I'm going to be a fan of Fisher College. I'm representing them. And you look around, it's like, mod check, guys. Anyone else from Fisher College? And people live in the same city, and they'll be like, wait, that's a college? I don't know about this. It's really hard to sort of have the traditional, college sports culture that, I feel like NA has always been ahead of in terms of the culture of it, and it's still growing over here. And the UK sort of led the way for that a few years ago. It does hurt, and it hurts as well looking and teams and mainstays really like you guys missing out, because I look back to, I mean, when I think about it, it feels just yesterday, CRL Worlds last season. Like, on a good note, I want to ask you more about your experience there. Like, how was it, of course? Why do you think the EU teams underperformed that Berlin series? Like, what are the highlights for you and the experiences as a player and what it meant?
I mean, that Berlin series could have went either way, to be honest. I was playing horrible for most of it until the very end. And then it's definitely, I think the whole experience was just like mind blowing. Not only was the tournament almost perfectly run, in my opinion, like there were no hiccups at all from the production end of things, but the actual experience of playing on that stage and, going through the rounds against some of the best teams in the world is like, it's mind blowing. Like, it was probably one of my best experiences that I've ever had, not just playing Rocket League, but in my life. And I was just very, very blessed to have the opportunity to do so. And yeah.
Yeah, I think it's just the perfect answer, really. I mean, even going back as far as like the LCQ run to qualify as well, like everything about it, the Cinderella vibes of it all. Like, we'll be talking about that Berlin series for years to come. Like, I know it's such a historic moment. Like, the disbelief and the footage. To be fair, I should have got a clip from it for this broadcast so we could see it again. But just like the whole hysteria of the situation, it's just really what the tournament is all about. I don't know how much hope you hold of like trying to make it back to CRL Worlds this year. I know you're doing pretty solid in the CCA Opens, and ultimately spring is what matters the most, both in EU and NA. But it's like, you talk about the depth in East as well. Like, do you think East are going to lock up all the LCQ spots for NA? Like, talk to me more about just how much this depth has developed.
Well, I think the East will probably, if anything, they'll get weaker, I think, but not that much weaker. I think a lot of the rosters will stay the same, but we will see some movement across winter. I know for us, J-Cubed is graduating this semester, so he won't be playing in the spring. And we're looking at a few pretty high-level players to replace him. We definitely don't want someone that's at or below his skill level. We're definitely going to get someone that's better than he was as a player. So I think already our chances for, locking up either a CRL spot or a world spot next semester are looking up. And I think for me personally, like, it'll be my last semester in the spring. So I'm going to do everything in my power to make it back to Worlds, at least get my chance to compete one more time and not, lose in the group stages to both the teams that have always had our number in every tournament. But, I just want to get back there, and I want to compete at least one more time as sort of like a send-off to my CRL career.
Exactly. You got to go out with a bang. I noticed that you've been infected with KJ's webcam disease, and you got a little bit black screen, but we can still hear you completely fine. And speaking of KJ, I mean, we had a few questions from viewers that wanted to ask you something, Raz, but I want to ask KJ first because I know I've still got a question I want to get to.
Well, I said it on the First Touch podcast. Like, why do NA crowds always seem quieter than the EU crowds? And would you love to see CRL actually in EU, especially in London, where the crowds actually are hyped up for the event?
Yeah. I think it's I've also had this talk with my teammates because I've noticed it too, that EU crowds, I think in general, are more organized and they're more hype for teams in terms of their chants. And I would love to see a CRL event in EU. I mean, I'd love to see any esports event in EU because I think personally it's always better. But I understand that a lot of the big colleges are in NA, and there's still aren't as many EU colleges competing at that high level. So I understand that for now they have to do it in NA, but I'd love to see one maybe in a year or 2 years down the line, somewhere in EU.
That's a perfect answer. Thank you for agreeing with me.
We are about to have a real problem. I mean, I already have a little bit of a problem. We do have a lot of teams that can compete at that level, Raz. I don't know if you've noticed the explosion of depth of top teams. I mean, I say explosion, it's just an appearance of maybe 4 or 5, but you may not have caught the qualifier yesterday, but I mean, we've got Hamburg, a team that on paper are the sort of similar level to Northwood and Fisher College. They are genuinely in. I know I said EU were going to be good last year, and we ended up sort of falling flat on our face. I get that, but Hamburg this year are a bit unfair. Let's put it that way. I'm of the opinion that we can wipe the floor with West, but I don't know how you feel about the West right now.
I just want to. I don't know if you guys have noticed this at all, but do you guys know Cal Poly in the West?
Yes.
So yesterday they had to play 6 series against not bad teams, like pretty good teams in the West, considering their records, and they went 6-0 on the day, and before that they had been considered
2-3. Yeah.
Before that they were 2-3, and many people considered them to place 14 through 16 throughout the entire season. So I think the state of the West is absolutely horrible. I think any region who has a college that has players could probably beat them. I think Samba's washed. I think Lucia's washed. I think the best player they have is Eeyore, and he didn't even go to Worlds. And, if you have someone like Gil performing on Boise State, how good can a region be?
I mean, I don't think we can really lay, any different to those bold claims. So fair enough. But I kind of want to transition here from, talking about the West and teams that are, fighting for the possibility to go to CRL Worlds to a team that doesn't have that opportunity. And this is a segue towards the international transfer that we had at the end of the season, Quint coming over to St. Clair. I understand that asking this question is like opening up a bag of marbles that will spill absolutely everywhere because there are many differing opinions on this, but I'm curious, just at a base level, you're coming off of the World Championship and all of a sudden Berlin sends one of their players to Canada to try and vie for North American. What does that reflect upon the collegiate scene as a whole now that we finally see a international transfer with a big backing behind it?
I think, when big moves like this happen, it always sets the precedent for other colleges to do the same. I know St. Clair is a very large program. They have a lot of people working on their staff, not even just on coaching and directing, but they have people on media, on graphics, basically every position that you'd want to have for an esports team, they have. Of course, they have run into some drama with, Comp and J and all that. I'm sure many of you have seen that spill out. So I do think it's quite unfortunate for Quint because, he kind of came in thinking that he was going to be that third man on Comp and Spood's roster. Turns out Comp leaves and they want to do a 5-man roster with Christian, Kamal, him, Spoods, and Comp who left. So I do think it was unfortunate timing for him, but it's still a great opportunity. I know I've been following him on Twitter and talking with him behind the scenes, and he seems to be having a good time over there. And I've invited him plenty of times over because he's only about 40 minutes away from me.
Yeah.
And I just said straight up, like, you can just stay at my home in my sister's room.
So many great teams in Michigan. Like, it's actually wild. Like, even there, you're at the facility,
too many,
right?
Yeah, I'm at the
fantastic
facility. This is in like the bottom of our student center. I'm at the very back, so you can't really see it all, but there's like a bunch of computers in front of me.
That's so cool. Honestly, there's so few unis that offer that level of support. There is some in Europe as well. I think I don't know if I saw JCube sneak up behind you. I might have seen someone.
Yeah, he's sitting to my left. He's here, even though he's not he's graduating and not playing anymore. But he's here.
Yeah. Oh, well, it's good to have him. It's good to have him. There were a couple questions, of course, as we did let people know that you were going to be on the podcast, and we did have a couple questions submitted just for you. There was Subzant from UWE. He asked, what's your opinion on the CRL teams on the EU competition this year? Do you think they're better or worse than last year, or is there very little to no attention paid to roster changes across the pond? This is your opportunity to say that you haven't watched EU at all, and if so, that's completely fine.
I wish, I honestly, I wish I could come in here and say I haven't watched any EU, but I have.
Oh,
So I do know some of the changes. I think the loss of Pirate R on Doran's is a big hit.
it's
and
true.
I don't think that they're going to make Uni Rocketeers because of it.
All right. I mean,
And
that's a take. I
yeah.
still think Torrens were performing pretty strongly, but I agree Pyra R is the heart of soul in that team. And
it's just there's no chemistry now. They lost it all because of him. And I think also, Berlin obviously qualified, and I don't know the strength of their new third that they got, but it'll be interesting to see how they perform without Quint, who's been a long time third of them. In terms of the other teams, I know Kiel stayed the same. What was that? The Lawnmowers, they stayed the same.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't think that there were too many like crazy roster changes, and from this result of the first qualifier, it doesn't seem like anything's too out of order. But we'll see as the season progresses who joins who and how the teams train, I guess.
Yeah. No, that's cool. It's good. I like that you point that out and you saw it as well. Yeah, our top 4 seeds in the qualifier actually all qualified, and you're right. Berlin and Kiel very much similarly so. High roll, I think most would say is a similar level to Quint. Like that's not a major downgrade, if a downgrade really at all. Hamburg, definitely the main new arrival, and Amsterdam qualifying does look good for the Netherlands, at least for now. There was one other question. It was, of course, from our... Be careful with this one, Raz, because it is from our head of operations, Scenarius. He asked, who was the best EU player to hang out with at Worlds?
Ooh. I mean, I gotta say Quint. There weren't many EU players that I hung out with. I'll be frank.
That's fine.
But most of the times when I did talk to them, it was in the practice area. But when I wasn't in the practice area, it was usually Quint. I had breakfast with him one day, and that was pretty fun. And then also Cood from Salford. He was also super nice. Everyone was just really nice, but those are the 2 guys that stuck out to me the most.
Ah, that's cool. That's good to know. That's actually nice as well. I know Cood will be really happy that you mentioned him in that regard. It's nice. He's the sort of guy that's always smiling. It's always good, especially considering how fast we all got eliminated. It's nice that you still got a chance. I mean, I've asked everything I'm happy to for now, but I understand Gaogaen and KJ, you may still have something while we've got Raz here to ask him whatever we feel like we've got left.
Yeah,
you go first, mate.
I've got one more. Yeah, sorry. I'll make this really quick, though. The previous question about Quint obviously was from Joda, our resident statistician and analyst extraordinaire. But to completely pivot, this is again, complete curveball here. We previously had Mercy of Portsmouth on, and he was asked what his favorite flavor of crisp was, to which he responded prawn cocktail. Somebody in chat has prompted us to do the same to you, so I ask you just straight up, what is your favorite flavor of potato chip?
Okay, I'm glad you clarified potato chip because I was going to ask you what a crisp was.
I knew that would
you know what I liked? Anything that's baked from Lay's is an S tier chip, and specifically the sour cream and onion from Lay's baked is my favorite chip.
Yeah,
that's actually good. That's a good take. Sour cream and onion is a goated flavor. We have it in Pringles here in the UK, don't we, KJ?
Yeah, we do. They are pretty good. Like, for one last question, I'm looking right now that behind the scenes you've got such great setups and such good support. What do you think is more important from an NA standpoint, out of the talent of your players or the support from the back, from your coaches, from how much you scrim together, from your the institution you're in? What would you say is more important?
I mean, at the end of the day, I think Rocket League is very different from a game like League of Legends, where if you play a game like League of Legends at the highest level, you do require a large amount of coaching staff, a large amount of support staff to be able to compete at that high level. Whereas Rocket League, it's still pretty new when it comes to coaching. We're still trying to test the waters when it comes to support staff. So I don't think it's as necessary. I'd say if I had to give it a number guess, it'd be 75% players, 25% coaching staff. I think if you get the right players and you get them on the same team, then you'll usually get a good result. But if you have a good coaching staff behind them and you have a support system that they can fall back to, then that's when you get a team that can rise above to the very highest level of competitive Rocket League.
Great answer. Thank you for your insights, mate.
It's great. It's been fantastic having you on, Raz. Really, I don't know what else to say. It's been an honor, really. Our first NA true guest, as technically you're a panelist, Gaogaen, so I'm afraid you've gone even higher level. I don't know if there's anything you've got in terms of shout-outs or mentions you want to give or questions you want to ask us. The floor is yours. It's been fantastic having you on either way.
Yeah, I mean, I guess for shout-outs, I just want to shout out Oakland Esports. You know, thanks for letting me use the facility. Also, shout out CRL General and Vitali. You know, let's hope he does good things in the West.
And on that note, we will say goodbye to Raz. It's a fantastic ending, really. Shout out to him and the whole Golden Grizzlies squad. A fantastic roster. I do really hope they do regain in spring as well. As you can see, just so well spoken. I feel like we need more true interviewees like this in Europe. Not to say that we don't have them, but like it feels like in NA they just have a endless well of content.
Now, that was the most sense I've ever heard out of an NA player's mouth. Like, fair play. That was brilliant from him.
I mean, I would like to disagree, but it's actually kind of difficult, really. But I can say we do have another section coming up in terms of questions and answers. Not just an interviewee coming on, just you guys in chat and you guys in the Discord channel in the UR server submitting your questions. We got 3 questions that we picked out, Gaogaen, right? I mean, you can probably start us on the first one here. This is, of course, your questions. And if you want your questions to appear on the broadcast, make sure to put them in the Learner Drivers channel in the UR server.
Of course. Yeah, first question coming in from Treefork, you can see down below, asks, how do you think the winner of UR Winter will continue to perform in spring and at Worlds? Because obviously we know the UR Winter main event winner will automatically book their ticket to Worlds right then and there, which is pretty interesting. Like, I'll start off by saying that's interesting to get that auto lock. I think it's good to reward them early because surely we will have 16 fantastic teams in UR Winter. The competition in the first open qualifier proves that it takes a lot just to get to the main event itself. But I'm curious how the both of you feel about it as well, because the last time around we did this where we tried to carry the champion of Europe into the CRL World Championship, expectations were dashed fairly quickly here, and it almost feels too soon to build that hope back up until we know who exactly that team is who's going to win the winter event.
No, that's a good answer. Honestly, I would say, like, winner of Winter, Hamburg. Winner of Worlds, Hamburg. I think we're going to see a lot of other rosters battling out for 2nd to 6th. But, like, they are on their own level. The rest, like, it's really going to be nice to see Genoa turn into a properly well-organized team. It's going to be nice to see Hanover try sort themselves out. But Hamburg, they're not going to get toppled throughout because they've just got a caliber of player that's unmatched right now. Unless you get some mega January sign-ins, it's done. Let's just call it there. Give them the money.
I don't know if I'm that confident. I feel like so much always changes between winter and spring. I'm really happy that we do have the winner of UR Winter getting their ticket booked early to Worlds. It puts so much pressure and expectation and hype around this winter split as well. And it's so easy to just move the auto-qualify spot in UR Spring, right? Because if they are in the top 3 positions of UR Spring, well, then 4th place gets it auto-qualify because there's still 2 spots through the LCQ. It just works seamlessly to me. And I think a lot of the question from Treefork is more of a question of motivation in terms of the fact that, well, I've already got the big job done. But you've seen the prize pool for UR Spring. There's plenty enough motivation. I agree it won't be absolutely life on the line as much as maybe their opponents. And we might see them falter a little bit because of that. But I would put that more onto how motivated their opponents would be more so. And I think it'd be almost motivating in itself to just prove that you're still the best, even without Worlds qualification on the line. As of course, Hamburg do come into winter as favourites, but Amsterdam said it, and I kind of agree with them. They're not unbeatable.
Yeah, see, I'm curious on that point, though, with what you previously established. Like, if a team wins UR Winter and there's enough of a prize pool for spring, do you think that the winner of You Are Winter faltering is a sign of them not caring enough, or do they perform better because they have less pressure on them? Like, I mean, obviously they could maybe think less of spring and think we already have our ticket booked, why even bother? But they're not playing with the pressure on their backs about having to get their world's ticket. So I feel like that in and of itself is an advantage that they hold over the second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, those teams that are on the border of pushing into Worlds.
Yeah, that does actually go both ways. You're right. Sorry, KJ, yeah?
I was going to say, like, it really depends on the player and the team. Like we see with Salford, pressure makes diamonds. And like we saw with UEA last year, like, pressure makes you capitulate. It really just depends on how they are. It does. Like, it would be really nice to see, like, there's no pressure on Hamburg and they just start freestyling on people. But, don't know. It really, really depends. It's such a mixed bag of personalities that some people just, they love the sweat, they love the pressure. It really, really depends who they are as individuals.
All right. I will bring up our second question then, as I hope that answered your question, Treefork. Our next question is from Meow. You may know Meow, a rather valuable staff and admin member. You can see in the server. Make sure to ping him, spam ping him, let him know his question's being answered. Probably don't ping him, it might be annoying. It is, how well do you think the top EU teams from back in 2018/19 would do in an event such as UR Spring this year? This is an interesting question.
It is. I am going to get my part out of the way rather quickly here because I can't really do justice to what Nua would probably be able to add to this question. Little known that I started off my, esports, I guess, viewer career more so with League of Legends than Rocket League. So I wasn't really around for this time, and accurate comparison not drawn. But again, just basing it off of recent results here, the form looks to be strong. And with even more players, slated to join in spring with those signups where the prize pool is there, everything seems to matter. There's more world spots. I know the competition will be tough regardless.
If we're talking about their current ability now or their ability in 2018 to 2019, like, if you hit a flip reset musty in 18 to 19, people would look at you like you're a god. Like, the game is so different. Like, they're just like GC1s, honestly, like the best teams back then. They just get completely balled.
For reference, of course.
Even still, the rosters have gotten stronger. I don't think they do much. Sorry, Steve.
Well, just as a reminder, EURC 2019 was won by the German Oldenburg Avengers. They took home the lion's share, £60 prize pool of the 90. Of course, runners-up were the Loughborough Lions, who took home £10 each. Congratulations to them. Oldenburg were ELMP, Smilly, and Jack Nicholson. And the Loughborough famed roster at the time was, of course, Matt M, Mish, and Lou. The other teams in the quarter semi-finals were Stuttgart, also from Germany, that's Desired, all that remains in Satero. And the other team in the top four was Lancaster University, which was me, DMAC, and Orion. How well would we have done, say, going into even these qualifiers in UR Winter? That's the question, Gaogaen, because KJ's died.
Yeah, this is a big reach back in your analysis that you have to make of your own play, no less. I mean, are you the type to again? Well, actually, to flip this and go back to what KJ was mentioning, if it truly is the question of you take these players' current skills, like not how they played back in 18-19, but you take their current skill and inject them in. If we dropped you on the pitch in open qualifier number 1 yesterday, how far do you think you're making it?
Right now, if you dropped that Lancaster roster, like right now, I don't think Orion's played the game substantially in about across the past 2 years. I obviously haven't played it substantially, but form is temporary, class is forever. We'd have probably made it to maybe lower round 4, maybe. That's optimistic, probably lower round 3. For me, the interesting question is, what if we never stopped playing? Like, if there was always competitions to still be playing, and how well would we have kept up? How good would DMAC and Orion be? Would I still be relevant? That's the impossible question to answer for me, because I think in some universes we could be a team that still pushes to try and qualify for winter, although top 16 nowadays is such a hugely competitive margin, and we're talking about blind trajectories here, that it's kind of an impossible question to answer.
To be fair, Tylak, though, if you were still playing as much then as you did now, you probably wouldn't be talking, would you? You'd be playing.
Yeah, I would definitely be playing
You'd be on that
for
60 league
Lancaster.
grind.
We'd have been the best university. I mean, I'd have to be doing a PhD right now, is the universe we're thinking of. Now, I'm far underqualified to do a PhD. I'd be playing alongside a Lancaster team with probably like Sapakwa and Hugo. I mean, they're still pretty good today. Would we qualify for winter? I mean, I think if I'd never stopped playing, I'd say we'd have a fighting chance, yeah. But the real question is, Loughborough technically beat us. What happens to the best captain in UK University Rocket League ancient history? You know, in the BK era, before KJ, not after KJ. I don't know. I mean, Loughborough would never be the same roster. They could never keep the same roster for an extended period of time. So I don't even know. This question's impossible.
If Matt M was back, he'd kill us all. I stand by that. What an absolute legend of the sport. If you get Matt M on stream in a final, he'd beat Hamburg. He's just got it. He's got the neck.
We need Matt M to come on Learner Drivers podcast is clearly the question that is the answer that we're giving to that one. Our last question from the channel that we're pulling in is from our broadcast manager. It's strange. Our staff just seem to be really interested. I'm not sure why. It is, of course, from AJ, and I think his question's really interesting because it's asking us to sort of predict here, Gaogaen. It's, who are the biggest or best team on paper that you don't think will make it to main event? And I assume that is, of course, here in winter.
Yeah, I've had a lot of time to think about who I would say for my answer here, and I'm still not certain. It's such a tricky one because you are asking, to predict who makes it through essentially Open Qualifier 2, 3, and 4. And
No
I feel
way.
like I feel like the easiest path is to look at top 16 for Open Qual 1 and think who out of these remaining 12 teams in the top 16 is most likely to bottle consistently, which is never a fun thing to think about, right?
That's what we're here for. You
Yeah,
gotta say someone.
exactly. All right. I've killed enough time there. I am. I'm going to make a very, very bold call here, and I am going to say that it's Aalborg to do it. I want to pick a strong team that. I feel like it would be a safer play to go down towards 16 and be, or even pick someone like Exeter. But Aalborg strikes me as the roster that, given multiple opportunities, is the most likely out of the field to come just short of making it through, which is really tough for them because I'd love to see them play in main event. But you got to pick somebody.
I mean, the scary thing is that I don't think that's a bad take. We saw their throw potential last year, and I still think from what I saw of them in the one series I watched, they are, obviously it's early days for this roster, still a bit messy. They look beatable for a team as highly seeded as they were. But it is about an interpretation of the question, right, KJ? I mean, last week you'd have said UEA were the best team, therefore if they didn't make it, that would be the hugest upset. You mentioned Exeter did Gaogaen, and they are not inside the top 16 teams coming into the first qualifier. Maybe they will be going into the second, but we can say they're a great team, but is it about how they were rated coming in? What teams are standing out for you as potential? I mean, the one team that you need to predict to not make it.
I mean, the headline would write itself that if it was Frohampton. How brilliant would that be? I would love it. I would honestly love it, even though they're a good team. Purely for the memes, please, Roehampton Fro, please. But I don't know. I could see UEA not making it. I'm gonna keep saying it because maybe they will buck up. I could honestly see Kit not making it because they're really good, but I know they're all really busy, which is a massive difference maker when you're in your last year of studies. But I'm gonna say Roehampton because it's the funniest answer, obviously.
That's all right. I mean, Roehampton not making it would be funny for everyone other than them to an extent. I feel like they're bound to make it. They're too motivated, and they've got the ceiling. If I'm forced to pick a team, it really upsets me. Because one, I'm probably going to be wrong. Two, I kind of hope I'm wrong. Because for me, it's Portsmouth. Now, some people would say that's not a crazy take because maybe they aren't a top 16 team. Obviously, for me, I would say I don't care. They were EURC 2022 champions. They don't even qualify for winter after just one changed player for their roster. That's still the sort of result that would make waves. And obviously, I don't read into them DQing too much. We had Mercy on, and obviously, they just weren't available. But they still have a lot to prove this year, as far as I'm concerned. And I haven't seen it yet. I am worried for them.
Yeah, I think it's probably the end of their time. Really, I really like as lovely as Mercy is. Like, he is going to really have to pull himself up to like get that team through, because he's the only player that I'd be scared of playing, to be honest. Like, and they used to have two of them. I can see him bottling it. Like, they've lost their magic. They're not as likable, and they're not as good anymore. Sadly.
Well, that is sad. That is sad. I feel bad now. Let's lighten things up, guys. Let's predict who will make it in the next qualifier. Reminder, of course, the next qualifier is on Thursday, just 3 days away, the day after tomorrow. That does make sense. And of course, we did predict what teams would make it through the first qualifier last week, didn't we, KJ? The same KJ that did say 3 UK teams would qualify. I am going to hold you accountable here. If you missed the first episode, where were you? You can watch it. It is available on YouTube, as this will be. KJ said that Hamburg would qualify. Wow, congratulations. We all said that, and wow, he was right. He said Salford, Roehampton, and UEA. They were all wrong. That was 1 out of 4. NuaLaoch said Hamburg, Kiel, got 2 right, but also said Roehampton, and he said Kit. They were both wrong. So he got 2 out of 4. I got 3 out of 4. Just going to put it out there. I got 3 out of 4. I got 3 out of 4. That clearly makes me the best. I mean, I'm sad because I predicted Hanover. They didn't make it, but I had Amsterdam, Berlin, and Hamburg. And frankly, it was a nice surprise that Kiel did make it for the UK. Who did you... This is your chance to cheat, Gaogaen, but who did you probably expect to be making it? If you didn't know what happened yesterday.
Yeah, so if I just completely wiped my memory, I would probably look at the seeding list from the wonderful seeding, commission and figure out the top 4 seeds from there. But realistically, I mean, I think I would have backed at least Hamburg and Berlin to make it through as 2 squads. And then from there, it's mostly picking favorites. Maybe could have said that Kiel would make it through. Obviously before the action kicked off, thinking other teams, maybe Salford could make a run, Dorans as well. I figured it would be through lowers, but at the end of the day, maybe 3 if I was lucky. I don't want to give myself too much credit, though.
Okay, maybe 3. But your chances to get a full perfect 4 here, although I think this might be one of the most difficult to predict. I want you to predict what 4 teams you think are going to qualify for main event on Thursday. Good luck.
And yeah, I'm on the spot first. So I've thought about this a little bit, and I think I am known for, whenever I'm on the desk during broadcast, being very bold and even going with very heavy underdogs. I don't want to do that here. I want to play it safe, but playing it safe to me is just fully backing the Quali 1 results. So of that, while I do appreciate Mercy's confidence about Portsmouth, I don't think it happens here in the second open qualifier. So my teams to go through are IUL of Lisbon, Pesto University of Genoa, Dorans Boxfish, and Hanover. I think those are my 4 teams. It's mostly just like purely based on results and the teams that were right there away from qualification. And there could be a ton of debate about who ends up knocking them out in an odd match, but I feel like those are the safest picks in my head.
Okay, that's interesting. We're going to save the worst till last with KJ, because I feel a little bit samey here. Is I have 3 of the same 4 as you, Gaogaen. I also have IUL, Genoa, and Dorans. For those, I think they really are the 3 I'm relatively confident in. And there is one more team that I did like what I saw out of, and I'm going to go with them, even though the bracket may be mean to them, depending, I don't know. I've got Salford as my number 4. I have got 1 UK team per qualifier, at least across the first 2. So those are my 4, but what about you, KJ?
So I'm going to say Roehampton are going to make it and just completely make me eat my words. I hope so. All right, second, I'm gonna probably say like Genoa. They just look next level. To be honest, they'll make it. I'm gonna predict Dorans to throw again and not make it. I want to say UEA make it through lower. I can't help myself. I think they'll do it, and because I've been a dick to him again, Hanover. I think System's gonna score a hat trick in the lower finals, and he's gonna shut me up.
Okay. These are probably more likely takes. I mean, you still have UEA, but it's maybe you still okay. Maybe it will end up as poor for you as last week, but maybe your fate will change, KJ. Those are, of course, our predictions for the Thursday qualifier. We'll have all that to talk about, of course, next Monday on episode 3 of the Learner Driver podcast. We hope you've enjoyed us here on Monday, the 7th of November. And of course, another huge thank you and shout out to Gaogaen for standing in at short notice, literally today's notice, with NuaLaoch being unavailable. And you know what? We couldn't have had a better possible replacement. I hope you've enjoyed today's episode. Reminder, it will be available as soon as possible on YouTube, and we will see you next week.
myself